Corona time. Hey, it's Corona time right now. It's Corona time.
Acid rain. Drug addiction. Now, more than ever,
It is important to remember the true meaning of
your life might just
It's Corona time.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Happy Hour. As you're looking at my screen anyway, from left, moving clockwise, we have Jason. I am your host, Curtis Taylor, and down at the bottom, we have our other co-host, Yobi, down at the bottom.
That's funny. We're all different on each screen.
Right.
It's happy hour.
And there it is. Right. So for those of you who are watching live, normally we would end up playing an intro, but for some reason I can't get the intros to play through whatever this is, Zoom.
Intro's being quarantined right now as well.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think when we were doing these shows early on, we were talking about ways of getting people to come in, and we kicked around ideas of having people call in or video in, and it just wasn't ever urgent for us. And here we are, the second week into an official shelter in place anyway.
Yeah.
And I think the whole country knows what Zoom is, and everyone has become comfortable with dressing from about here up.
I may or may not
whatever is
shirt and shorts on today.
right.
I'm laughing because there is a video of a guy getting up, and he is actually.
Was that one of the teachers?
I think it might have been.
Right.
Forgot he wasn't wearing anything down below.
Right.
It can't be worse than the lady who took her phone to the bathroom with her.
That was pretty good. The lady to the bathroom was pretty good. There's been some good ones.
It's a brand new world right now, and I don't know if it's better or not.
I don't know if it's.
I've
enjoyed watching the struggle. The struggle is. We had our own little struggles the last time when we tried to do it, but we were trying to watch the city council meeting earlier today, and the first 15 minutes were. Hey, I could only see. So there was somebody. Target city of. I won't even say what city it was. It was somebody that was like this, and they kept telling them to put their camera.
Right.
And then there was somebody else that was like this.
Looking straight up your nose. Like, come on.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was.
And we know everyone's nostrils very well in the last week and a half.
Clear clouds from the sky before you get on your Zoom meeting. But
Yeah.
I also say I feel like it's potentially very generational, because even with WhatsApp, so I communicate a lot with my folks back in Indiana on WhatsApp, especially so they can video with my son. And yesterday, like 15 minutes in, I had to tell my mom to, again, raise the camera up because I could only see her forehead up. I'm like, where's your camera at? On the phone, Mom. She goes, oh, it's on the top of the camera or the phone. I'm like, why are you so low? She didn't even pay attention. She was off like looking at something else and just holding the phone randomly out in front of her.
I love it.
Yeah, the float, it's real. And it's like looking where you're driving. The phone just kind of goes, wait, what's happening? Coming off the top of you, right? So we're sitting here. Well, go ahead, Jason.
I was going to ask if we should do our obligatory round robin of what everybody's drinking on tonight's show.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We can see yours right there, loud and clear.
Yeah, I went local today. So last show, which was a little over a week ago, we dubbed it the Quarantini show. So I was trying to do my gin martini, and it went down super smooth to the point that this fresh bottle is now almost half a bottle. Three gin and vermouths in. The next morning, I was a little foggy. So I went with a single local beer today from Casa Agria, their new Digital Forest IPA.
Nice. Curtis, what are you drinking?
Well, and the other thing, just thinking about Jason's beer, was I just saw, because they did a social media post, that they have kegs available, but their kegs are disposable. Is that right? That you don't pay a deposit and you don't bring anything back. Is that correct?
They probably did something just for that, right? They probably did it just for the quarantini.
Okay. Well, so then my on the keg grader, I got a brand new keg of Lizard's Mouth from Figueroa Mountain. I don't know, what is this sitting in at? Somewhere in 8 or 9%, something like that.
I was gonna say that's not a light beer by any means.
No, not at all. Yeah, and so I've been going to institution about every 3 or 4 days, and then I decided maybe I should avoid all of the other Corona-infected beer drinkers and just go get a keg and stay home for the next month or so. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Wait, did you get a 5-gallon keg or a half barrel?
It was a 5-gallon, so I'll be back again like in 3
I was
days.
gonna say that.
You'll be back in 3 days?
The amount of beer that we're all drinking and just to stay lucid, like you're hardly ever drinking alcohol to stay lucid, but it seems like that's what we're doing. All right, Joby, what do you got?
I'm doing gin and tonics tonight, Fever Tree tonic, and I'm doing Blue Coat, which is actually a nice American gin. So I don't have the bottle in front of me, but I'm sure I'll get it at some point.
At some point.
This is only number 2. You're scaring me now because you said you had 3. And I do not have to get up for work tomorrow. Let me preface it with that. Which is today is Monday, right? Just for the record.
It is Monday for the record.
700th day of Mark or something. I saw a meme like that earlier. That was great.
And like I said, that was just a pinch foggy. It wasn't, thankfully it did. My old man hangover didn't kick in. I got a good amount of water and slept and everything. But I will tell you, I was dragging butt a little bit, and I was playing with my son the next morning. One point I laid on the carpet and kind of joked, I yawned. I'm like, I'm tired, buddy. And he looked at me and goes, he's 2.5, remind you. He looked at me and goes, you're tired, Dad. You should get some sleep. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reassurance.
Well, I think Joby, you brought up a good point there, that it seems our schedules and the times are all getting all fuzzy, and whether you sleeping in because we don't have to get up for an alarm anymore, but that can throw off the entire day. And thankfully I have 2 kids who are that have to go to class, have to go to school. So that kind of keeps me on. And then I'm teaching 2 days a week. And then my wife is working 5 days. So I woke up Saturday morning though, and somewhere in the middle of the day, I couldn't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday. It's just because it doesn't matter anymore, really.
It doesn't matter. Yes, the blurred lines. But yeah, I think I felt today. I really did feel like it was Monday, but I agree with you on yesterday and Saturday. I did not. Well, and the day drinking is probably not helping. Only on the weekend.
Right. That reminds me of that commercial. What's the premix? Was it Jack Tea or flavored? There's some kind of premixed spirit right now, and that's their little tagline song at the end of the commercial. It's like, how about we do a little day drinking?
That's perfect. Wow, that's a fancy tagline. That's not White Claw.
It's not. I don't think so. I'll have to look it up, but yeah, it plays on ESPN a lot. ESPN
It must be a seltzer. What is it? If they're working a day drinking with Jack Daniels.
Let's see if I can find it while we're talking here.
Why don't we do some day drinking? Well, let's talk about day drinking, and let's talk about drinking in general. The rules have changed for sure. I was telling you guys about my 30-something Zoom happy hour, 30-something person Zoom happy hour that we did on Friday, which was an S show, but it was a lot of fun. There was no way to tell who was talking. And at one point there were shots going on. It was great. It was fun. It was definitely a new way to have a party. I saw somebody did a, what do you call it? A brunch in their, I think it was Dotto. They did a brunch where it was everybody out in their front yard. Yeah, it's great. And they took their drinks out and they had like a neighborhood.
I saw some other mutual friends where the ladies were missing their normal weekly breakfast date, all the moms. So they went out to a parking lot with their minivans and had the tailgates up in like a little semicircle with blankets, and they had breakfast and drink tea and sat on the tailgate in the beds of their minivans.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like it. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's really advanced since we talked the last time, when we talked the last time, I think it was right on the cusp of getting alcohol delivered to your house, and now it's full blown. You can get cocktails, you can get kegs to your house. Curtis, I don't know why you left. You can get a keg delivered to your house.
Bevmo didn't have it at that. They didn't have delivery, but at the same time, it really didn't hit me that I shouldn't be going out until. I mean, I was ordering the keg because that was the idea that I wouldn't have to go out. But then when I went out and I'm at Home Depot and there's a queue with big letter X's keeping people at least 6 feet away, they only let 4 or 5 people into the building at a time. Then I'm like, oh yeah, this shit is kind of real. Maybe I should just have this all delivered.
One of the biggest stores ever in terms of physical like structure.
Yeah.
And they're worried about people getting too close to each other.
People?
Some of those aisles are like 10 feet wide.
I know.
Yeah, and they had somebody at the door, the exit, with a walkie-talkie saying, "Okay, we let 2 out. Now you can let 2 in," and that's how things are going to go for a while. But yeah, I didn't have I should have had it delivered, definitely.
I think there's some interesting shifts in like perspective on. We look at the grocery store chains and you think about the brands and their values. If you could just make a quick snap judgment of values based on how they're responding. Trader Joe's, as we were talking before we went live, they've got their 6-foot marks all along the sidewalk, and one of them here in Ventura. The other day there was a line of like 15, 16 people in it. And it's interesting. I'll segue just quickly. There is a certain amount of kindness and appreciation out there. There was a lady from the hospital. She was still in her scrubs. Her badge was on. It said doctor. And she was coming down the line, and numerous people, including myself, offered our spot in line, right? Because it was a long line. And she graciously declined. Denies not the right word. She declined. But it was nice to see people at least offering like, hey, our moment to get groceries isn't as crucial as yours. But the line was still really long, and they had us all spaced out, same idea, doors closed, motioning each other. And I went, the first time I tried to go to Trader Joe's, though, when everything broke out, there was a big line. I'm like, screw that. I'm not waiting in that line. Went to Vaughn's, right in the door, man.
Right. There's no control at Vaughn's, yeah.
There's no control.
I mean, I'm not saying there's no control, but they definitely are not monitoring how many people go in. Now, when you go to the check stand definitely had a 6-foot thing. The one I went to, they had like a little barriers, and there was a person monitoring the thing. But the vibe was definitely it's kind of somber. It was like everybody's kind of like, don't get near me. I don't want to get near you. Normally Ventura is such a friendly place, and everybody's helping each other. And then I don't know. So there was a weird vibe. So the delivery. I don't know. Is this the change of stores and the way that we view shopping, like forever? Getting everything delivered to your house. We were headed that way anyways.
Well, that's actually a good opportunity, I think, to talk about supply chain a little bit. Target is still out of paper towel, toilet paper, sanitizer. Half of the cleanser aisle in general was empty. Like I couldn't even get CLR. Like CLR does not kill COVID-19. Yeah. I mean, that's where calcium.
It has a long list on it, Jason. It might be on there. There's a long.
No, but that's where it gets its name. It's calcium, lime, and rust. There's still a lot of stuff that's not been replenished yet. We were talking about beer getting trucked to your house, and beer is still going to some of the restaurants that are doing takeout and delivery. But what about supply chain? Why do you think maybe after 2 weeks of us being in this, things still are not moving and getting replenished? Are people hoarding it still? Every time there's a case on the shelf, they're grabbing it?
I think some of those places have limits. I don't know. That's a good question. I think there's definitely not a supply chain issue with some of the like alcohol, some of the food items, things like that. I don't know. That's a good question. I know some places still have paper towels, toilet paper. They still have plenty of it. So I don't know if it's just like a Target thing. Like, do they put it out in the morning and then it's gone, and then that's it? That's all they have for that day till the truck comes. But yeah, the hoarding mentality is definitely been an interesting thing, because I went shopping for the first time on Saturday, and it was definitely an eerie feeling, but also kind of like, I should probably get my stuff and go home. I don't really want to be out here. And I've been out. It's not like I haven't been out, but I've been just going to like select places and coming back. So I don't know. Maybe people go in the morning, get all their stuff, and then they want to just get back home. And so maybe they're buying everything they have. They can't replenish their Vaughn's, half the shelves at Vaughn's were empty too. So who knows? Alcohol was full though. I just want to keep saying that. Alcohol was replenished.
Before we dig into alcohol anymore, I'm going to throw it to Curtis real quick because we know you've got some affiliation and some ties with a local university. Do you think the universities in general have released any of their like their paper goods, any of their supplies, or do you have special privileges, Curtis, if me and Joby run a little low, where maybe you know where that toilet paper towel closet might be?
Well, I do not have special privileges. We'll put that out right away. They are not. Those kinds of things are not making it out that I know of. But I would assume that they're holding on to it because at some point everyone's coming back. And so, I mean, if there was an emergency, then I would expect to see something more emergent than what's happening right now, other than people just hoarding it. Then I would see that, then I could see something maybe. But no, there's nothing that's coming out that way. You know, what I see is, in Camarillo anyway, the Vaughn's is empty all the time, and Smart and Final has too many people in the parking lot to even consider going into, like, even driving by, you know. And Trader Joe's, you know, the last time I was in Trader Joe's, which was right before everything hit, I walked in and one of their bins as you walk in was completely empty, and all there was 2 little pieces of asparagus that were laying in the bottom of this bin, and they were kind of, and it was like this X of, and I took a step, and it was one of those kind of comedic things where you take a step and you just pivot on that foot, and then the next step is heading back out of the store.
Or asparagus.
Right. It's anyway, it's pretty it's hit and run. Now we've got a local market. It's kind of like all of the town center markets all over, and we can get a few things there, mostly ice cream, and
yes.
we may have to live on ice cream for a while. But
Poor Joe, you can't do that. You got some lactose.
Yeah, you know, the ice cream is okay. I got my drinks. I got my food and my drinks. You know what? I was living off chicken. We were doing a lot of chicken wings, and
I was dreaming about some chicken wings the other day.
Jason, I have to throw you some chicken wings.
Some short rib poutine.
You know what? I had some short rib. What's it called? Like 1 pan of short rib that was cooked already, so that made its way to my house.
Yes.
For sure. Nice hearty apocalypse food, they called it.
You mentioned that the no shortage of alcohol getting shipped around, and the supply chain there seems to be looking good. And we were talking about changes to local and state regulations now, where California has opened it up to allow businesses to actually send cocktails home with patrons, beers to go that normally would have had to been on premise. If you were still open right now, Joby, you know, do you think that would help sustain you? Do you think that concept would have given some life to a restaurant right now?
I think possibly. I think the thing is that since everybody can do it, so also the first thing is that the breweries and the wineries, actually, I guess distilleries for that matter, any of those guys, before they weren't allowed to send something directly to I guess they could ship it to your house through, like, you know, UPS or whatever. Mm-hmm. They actually now, and Curtis, that's why I was telling you, Figueroa Mountain, I'll give them a plug. They're hand delivering to your house at a discount. So look it up. Shout out to Chuck and those guys at Figueroa Mountain.
All right.
That's one of the models that's definitely changed. So where before people were coming to the breweries and drinking there, you can't do that anymore. So they will sell you, you know, a growler or a crowler. They've always done that, or cans to go. But the next level is you can call and say, I want a keg of whatever, X, Y, and Z, and they will bring it to your house. And so that model we've never seen that before. You know, that's something that's new. I think people like Postmates and these kind of places were starting to do stuff like that, but it was never where a brewery could just bring, you know, a case of something and a keg to your house. So that was the first one. And then the second one was the cocktails. I mean, it makes me wonder 8 weeks, 10 weeks from now, are we going to be like, you know what? I'm going to have a party at my house. I want some martinis for 12 people. do I just call my restaurant, my local restaurant or bar? And then are they going to bring me food and a martini set, you know, for X amount of guests that I have? I think we're heading that way. It's an interesting shift. It's like, so that's, to answer your question, like, I don't know right now if it will sustain everybody, but it may be the future where, you know, you get a whole spread delivered to your house with everything you need, ice, maybe even a shaker. I don't know. I saw one of the Mexican restaurants was giving out little shakers with the margarita mix. I thought that was cool.
That's dope. You can get some local shakers and
yeah. So it's kind of the Wild West of that stuff. And then I don't know if they're gonna unrelax it, tighten it when all this is over. They're gonna say, hey, you know what? That was cool for the crisis, but now we're gonna go back to the regular stuff.
How can you even imagine trying to come back off of that? Like, that is not going to be something that that I can see people appreciating, you know.
I think now that we've already let the horse out of the gate on that one, though, then it's going to go back to the free market type of concept where it's like the next evolution of bottle service, right? Everybody went to Vegas, and the big thing for a long time was go to the club, reserve a space, and reserve X number of bottles, and they bring you the whole shebang, like you're saying. You got a tray, you got all the garnishes, it's really well. In this case, to your point, Curtis, about relaxing it, and can we even, you know, rein it back in? I think it would just be up to the market where whichever restaurant was doing it the best, with the most polished, the most accuracy, best, you know, presentation, eventually they're going to rise to the top, and everybody else is going to fall off anyway. Because it seems like if every restaurant's doing it, then no one restaurant is going to be able to succeed unless they've got finesse with this service.
Yeah, and I mean, if I know a government, which I pretend to do, there's going to be a permit. There will be a permit, so it'll be like, okay, you have your regular license. Oh, do you want to do carry out cocktails or delivery cocktails? Pay an extra, whatever. And here's the rules. There's got to be, you know, some regulations on it.
They're going to put their hand out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So here's another permit, and you can do it. But I don't think we can go backwards from this. Like, I agree with Curtis. Like, I think people would be really pissed off. Like, how can you go backwards? You know, how can you come out? And so another thing is, I mean, yeah, I would love to do growlers. I've always wished we could do growlers or crowlers, you know, things like that. That would help us move more products and be a way for people to get beer, you know, all the time. So yeah, I think a lot of us would like to do that. But again, if everybody was doing it, I don't know, is it special anymore? And my biggest thing is, what do you guys think about the whole concept of a bar in general? Like, is that ever going to be something appealing? If we're in this for 12, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, is the concept of going to a bar and have, because we're kind of having a beer right now, if you think about it. You have your beer. We don't have the face-to-face interaction, but we are sort of having a beer.
Yeah, but there's a certain element that I think is missing for sure. It's great for us to be connecting, but I was having a conversation just the other day with someone close to me, different context. It wasn't about drinking, but it had to do with meeting in person and the value and the impact of actually connecting in the same physical space. This is a great substitute considering the conditions, but I think the bar will thrive again in the sense that there's a different feeling when you walk in. You get to throw your arm around the shoulder of each other, chuckle, you know, you slap each other on the back at a good joke. There's something totally different in that vibe that is appealing and keeps you coming back.
Curtis is smiling. What?
Well, I just think at first I thought Jason was going to say slap each other on the ass, and then and I'm like, you can't do that. You can't do that through a Zoom, and they're recorded on top of it, so it'd be tough to get away with that through HR. I'm just saying.
I don't know, but I agree with you right now. But what happens if that feeling goes away? You know, right now I think we all would like to go out to a bar. But as the weeks go by, does that change?
Do you think it'll really change though? I mean, I wasn't alive at the time, but if we go back to the thoughts of Prohibition, people still found a way to connect.
It's true.
Earlier, people were still out of the beach last handful of days trying to connect. I don't think that feeling will go away. If nothing else, I think people will long for it even more, especially when sports start to come back online. people's local bar and restaurant is the place to commune and to share common ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head with the sports thing, right? Because that kind of goes hand in hand. You go to the sports bar or whatever. But yeah, no sports, no entertainment of that kind of entertainment. I feel bad for sports gamblers. They're having a bet on. I heard those Russian ping pong, one-on-one ping pong games that were being bet on.
Yes.
Like there's nothing for sports gamblers right now.
There was a meme out on Facebook a couple days ago about the virus doing something that no woman has ever been able to do in the history of man. Bring the guys back to the dinner table. There's no sports, there's no entertainment, no concerts, no bars.
Well, just earlier tonight, you were talking about how you're listening to ESPN radio, and I thought, wow, that's just got to be static. Like, what's on? I just like listening to white noise.
They're doing a lot of recap. They're doing a lot of highlight stuff.
We're going to replay Super Bowl XL. Here we go.
Well, there's still a lot of talks, though. I mean, there's stuff that's coming down the pipe. The NFL draft is still planning to be held, even though the candidates and the college players won't be in attendance. So the draft is coming up. There's a lot of talk about how baseball is going to really handle spring training and
basketball.
There's topics. There's future focus, but there's also some stuff that they launched with the Ocho. Like there was a electricians competition recently, who the best electrician in the United States was. And it was some framing competition where electricians were pulling wire and doing outlets.
Was this pre-recorded or is this like going on right now?
That I'm not fully clear on, but it was pretty entertaining to watch.
There was did we talk about it last time? There was a pizza box folding competition.
I saw that. That guy was not as fast. If you remember the Domino's commercial, that guy was flying on the Domino's commercial. This guy was a little clunky.
Yeah, this pizza box building. It's like, wow, that's how bad it's gotten. Like,
I guess I'm missing out since I don't have cable, so I didn't get to see the pizza box.
No, I said, Curtis, I don't have it either, but I see these as like replays. I recommend Barstool Sports if you want to catch up on all the funny stuff. So Barstool Sports replays, like they're the ones that put the Russian ping pong action on the Russian ping pong games. And then what was the other one? Oh, camel racing, like actual camels racing in the desert and on
with
a track.
jockeys.
No jockeys. There's guys driving the car next to them. So people were betting on that. Hey, gamblers need to gamble, man. They need something.
If there's camels racing and you actually implemented a jockey, though, by default, you'd have to go with a 2-hump camel, right? To get to sit in between the humps. You could do a single hump camel.
Yeah, you gotta have the 2-hump. Yeah, I will say that the one thing that's come out of this is the memes. The memes are golden. Memes are. I can't. I've seen so many memes every day. It just keeps getting better and better.
Yogi, did you notice? I look at some of the memes like Curtis just looked at me, like that young kid shaking his head at his dad. Like, come on, did you just say that?
No, I think it wasn't necessarily that. I think what I was thinking was just I was shaking my head at how the screen time. I'm keeping track of my screen time since this has happened, and it is gone up. It has the same exponential growth as everything we've seen on every COVID chart, and it's because it's social media is the big one because I'm just sitting there and then in between things, and it's.
You gotta flatten the curve, Curtis. You gotta flatten the curve.
when you're day drinking, what else is there? Like you're drinking. Social media is about as productive as you can get with day drinking.
That's it. Day drinking and screen time go together. Some of my favorites have been the whole thing about I spend my day wondering if these are allergies or if I have COVID. Like, is this just a cough or am I sick? Yes.
Is that a black lung pop?
Right on. All right, so let's let's take a break. I've got to I'm going to my family is watching Project Runway, I believe, and it is lagging my end down a little bit. So I'm going to go I'm going to assert my call on the internet bandwidth here in just a moment. So we'll take a quick break. We'll come back in just a few minutes. We'll have a new guest. I've got Rick Hott in the waiting room waiting to come in. Rick was on the show, I was trying to think, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We had an Easter show, and we were drinking the Peeps Martini. He introduced us to the Rusty Nail. There were a couple other things that we had during that time.
It is almost Easter, isn't it?
It is, right. So we've got that going for us. And Rick is quarantined up in Eugene. So we'll get to find out how the University of Oregon is coping with all this. All right, so welcome back to Happy Hour. Since you're looking at my screen from counterclockwise, starting at the top left, we've got Joby, and I'm Curtis Taylor. We've got Jason Hendrick down in the bottom right, and special guest zooming in all the way from, well, I was going to say sunny Oregon, but probably not today, is Rick Hott. Rick has been on the show before. We were trying to figure out, Rick, probably 4 or 5 years ago.
It was 6,
oh,
and I know that because I went to the Happy Hour website, and it was Easter 2014.
Oh, wow.
Right. And are you drinking the Rusty Nail that you introduced us?
I'm not. I thought for tonight you said something about quarantine. This is my tribute to my wife and I got to go to Italy in September. And this is a Negroni.
Oh,
and one, I believe it's the perfect drink because it's sweet, it's bitter, and it's mixed 1 to 1 to 1. So, I mean, you can mix this when you're drunk, okay? And 2, it's especially perfect drink when you're in Italy and you're not a wine drinker.
Aha.
Because you can find them everywhere.
It's a bitter lover's drink, right?
Mm-hmm. A little bit of gin with you, Joby.
And
I've had it, yeah. The gin Negroni.
And just like all of us, we were talking just before we came back on air. Rick is shelter in place right now. I assume, though, with your duties at the university, that you're full of Zoom meetings all day long as well.
3 or 4 per day, and I still supervise custodial and building management, so I'm going in 2 or 3 times a week.
All right.
So it's an adventure. It does cut into the day drinking. I was listening during the first part of the show, and actually I'm spending more time at home than I ever have before. And I think I told a friend of mine earlier today who's retired. I was asking him about retirement, and I'm much closer to that than the 3 of you. And I asked him about that, and I said, I don't know. I've been looking forward to retiring for a long time, but God damn it, if it's like this, I'm going to be an alcoholic. I mean, my wife and I have our matching little offices set up next to each other, and somewhere between 4 and 4:30, we sort of peer out like Punxsutawney Phil and want to know what's coming out of the cupboard right now.
Yeah, the happy hour drinking time has definitely come earlier in the day, certainly.
Entirely. You mentioned, though, that overseeing the custodial side, so at the minimum, you still have access to sanitation supplies, cleaning supplies. So
Jason's looking for some TP.
I've got Jason. I got these rolls of toilet paper that are this
Right.
big. This is some industrial.
Yeah, industrial one ply.
everything that I can come through. All right.
And I am taking bids.
I'm on board with that. I saw a funny meme about the fact that toilet paper became the new American currency in the next 5 years.
That's right.
We'll have bartering and trading in the roles of Charmin and Stay Soft.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking, Joby, and Jason too, with the sanitizers that you use as you're washing down the cupboards, the countertops, cleaning out beer line, so I have this whole 32-ounce thing of Star Sand that I'm mixing up almost every other day that I'm just spraying down the tops of like the food. You know, if they're apples or oranges, just spraying that down the tops of cans and everything else, just to give it a good rinse, let it sit for a couple, like 10 seconds, and then wipe down.
I won't be concerned, Curtis, until you start showering with star sand. You got like a 5-gallon bucket with holes punched in the bottom of it, and you're pouring star sand into it.
Yeah, that one, that's not going to work too well for me. No, I don't think so. Yeah, that stuff's not great on the skin, but
It'll wash all the body out of your hair.
What's that?
So it'll wash all the body out of your hair.
Right, look at that. So we're going through, you know, one of the things that I was interested in is what have we learned in the last week that we've met? Because Rick, when the last show was, we had just learned like an hour before we went on that California was going to a shelter in place. And so that was about a week and a half ago, somewhere in there. Yeah. And you know, we've talked a lot about memes and everything else, the things that we've learned, but and seeing what other people have learned. But I'm curious as to what was there something that just came out of the blue, maybe kicked you in the balls, or you were like, oh wait, there is some humanity left, and it happens to be here in the house. I don't know where, like, I'm just trying to think of the fact that because I'm an artist, that I don't have a set schedule generally, except for when I'm teaching, that the only way that I am ever kept on schedule is by the rest of my family. So if they weren't here, I'd be getting up at weird hours, drinking all day long, going back to bed, and never getting anything done. So I think I'm eternally grateful to my family, and especially my wife, who is the only reason why I am still alive, probably. I mean, really, I would have.
I can vouch for that.
Right.
Yeah.
I would have sunk into the abyss of podcasting all day long, and I would just be doing like the Fat Cartman in bed when he's the gamer, and just calling in podcasts all day long.
Well, and Rick, at the break, we were talking about the fact that some of our shelter-in-place orders came right before St. Patrick's Day. So I would imagine on some level that was a big change. You know, we're talking about what we learned, but also in terms of significant impacts to our schedule, or as Curtis, you're alluding to, major changes to how we run our daily lives. How did you celebrate St. Patrick's Day, Rick? What did you do as an alternative?
I had scored a bottle of 2 bottles, one of the Jameson aged in IPA casks and one in the stout. And so I did tastings with my wife. Also had a nice bottle of the single malt Napoleon Castle. And so that made it okay. I'm Irish here, so it was fine. You know, what Curtis was talking about there in our schedules. So one of my responsibilities on campus is scheduling and event services. I've been working with college students doing events for almost 40 years, okay? What's happened in the last month is that after 40 years of helping students do events, my entire job is now preventing them from doing events.
All right.
And it's I mean, it's just how messed up that was. And you know, so we ended up, as the gathering number has come down and down and down, we've had one of my jobs is scheduling on campus. We've had to cancel 860 events between last week and April 28th. April 28th is when our shelter in place is, to at least, right? When is it in California?
April 30th, right? 31st?
Yeah, I think we're right around the end of April, but I think that's amazing to think about the fact that in a month's time, you had on the books potentially 860 events. And that's just one campus. Think about the number of events nationwide and the number of campuses that are holding that quantity of events. I think that gives people a really interesting insight and kind of that ripple effect of what this virus is creating in terms of how we interact and how we conduct our lives. 860 events of the course.
Those were the ones over 25 people.
So there's
then
more that we're not.
Then it went down to all gatherings. It was just a massive cancellation of everything.
Yeah, you mentioned, you're talking about events. One of the things that's come out of this for me is not looking at the calendar. And much like yourself, I live in the future. Our whole business is the future and forecasting and this event coming up, and it's all defined by events and milestones, right? So St. Patty's Day, Memorial Day, the start of summer. And I find like right now I have no concept of any upcoming calendar events because there are none. Like
right.
You said. And that's been one of the biggest things is just maybe living in the now, I guess, which is not a bad thing. And
I would say it's not a bad thing. There's that fine balance where I'm on the cusp of criticizing daily the types of people that are hanging out outside. I was on a quick bike ride today before the show, and there was numerous people along the beachfront still hanging out. But I was talking to a friend this weekend thinking about the hope that, yes, there's a major financial impact. There's a major business impact. There's a lot of impacts that are happening right now that may never, be seen again, and that may never change how we live. But I actually am hoping a little bit that there's some simplicity that we get out of this, some shift in value, because living, yes, you're talking about planning for the future and projecting for the future, but living today is, I think, been lost in a lot of ways. Even within my own career path, I was thinking about the number of days that I was, focused on next week, a month from now, 6 months from now, how am I going to make all this work? How am I going to make it work?
Yeah.
Versus saying what is happening today, especially in the hospitality industry, Joby, you and I shared. The guests, when they came into the restaurant, it was all about the now for them.
Yeah.
It was all that dining experience right then. And if I wasn't present, if I wasn't in the now for them at that moment, I was doing them a disservice. It's almost fun for me to see the potential that people could say, yes, I'm living, or I have to plan for the future, but I'm also enjoying and living in the moment right now and see how that turns out.
I think the living in the now person is definitely doing far better than the rest of us. And not that we're doing bad, but the person who was already like that is probably doing, it was a much easier acclimation because like Rick, I also was not home very much. And I've discovered sounds in my house that I didn't know existed that happened during the day.
Were too scary?
Yeah, no, they're just normal sounds that happen during the day that I just never heard because I wasn't here. So
I had one of those today, Joby. I was actually in the student union and I was walking down these steps and I said, what is that sound? And I looked up and it was rain hitting the skylight, and the place is always buzzing with people.
Right.
It's not a sound I've ever heard before, so it's, you key into these things that are like, that must happen all the time. I just can't hear it.
Yeah. So if there was a positive on this, which there's a few. We're also, I've never been to Eugene. I've been to Portland, but I don't know how Eugene is in terms of landscape and city-wise. But I was talking to someone today also about how lucky we are compared to places like New York that are super dense and that are these cities. Mm-hmm. We're spread out. Jason, we have room. Like we can go to the ocean and
we have a yard.
So I think we're lucky. We can't take that for granted. That what if you were in this apartment in New York and you couldn't even leave the building, just to go get something real quick and you have to come back in. So that is something that I'm grateful for. I mean, it could be worse.
One of the things that I've been doing over the last few days is doing time-lapse photography, and I'm just going and sitting in places where there usually are people, but there aren't anymore, and it's just quiet, and then just catching that piece. And after posting a friend of mine sent me a video from one of his friends in New York who lives in Manhattan, and it was a 30-second shot. It wasn't even time lapse. It was just 30-second shot out of his window, and there was nothing. It was like I am legend kind of thing, you know.
Yeah,
and
right.
so you think about a family of 4 or more living in a 2 or a 3 bedroom apartment and nowhere to go, no balconies or anything. And you're just like, oh shit, yeah, this isn't,
Yeah.
this could be a whole lot worse here.
We were also talking about things that I learned. Food and beverage are always tied together. The show is largely focused on the beverage side, but I know I can't drink without eating something. Some good chicken thighs and some stuff before set a base layer. That's another thing, you know, I think a lot of people are starting to realize is there is a value and an impact to the family or when you cook together, you eat together. We're hustle and bustle all the time, in and out. And, you know, yesterday I spent the afternoon and my son at 2.5 is just showing some signs of his dad at a young age, a little picky here and there. I made some lasagna last week and he wanted to eat just the noodle part and wanted to scrape the cheese and the meat out. But we made chicken thighs yesterday, simple salt, pepper, and butter. And he was like, I like chicken. I like chicken thighs. I like chicken. I was like, yeah. He helped, you know, tried to help peel some carrots. It lasted 2 minutes maybe. But the fact that we were engaging that way was a cool new thing that, you know, I haven't experienced so far.
That's for sure. I do. It's funny because being in a restaurant, Jason, you're in a lot of restaurants. Being in a restaurant pretty much all day, bouncing around, going to another restaurant. And then I used to laugh because I would get home and my family would want to go out to eat. And I would just spend all day in a restaurant. And then I'm like, okay, fine, we'll go out to eat because they want to get out of the house, they want to go out to eat. And then for me, it was just like, I'm at another restaurant. Like, I didn't really, but now it's like, wow, that is such a treat. Like it's gone back because when I was a kid, and I think you guys we're all in the same boat. It was a treat to go out to a restaurant. Like it was a special occasion. Like I remember when we went out to a restaurant. So I don't know, maybe that's going to be the case again. Maybe not. But I know right now I'm kind of jonesing for it. I wouldn't mind somebody waiting on me.
Rick, what was your favorite special occasion restaurant when you were growing up?
Who is that?
Rick? Yeah, Rick. What was your favorite special occasion restaurant when you were growing up?
You need to understand, I grew up in a town of 3,000 in coal mining area in eastern Ohio.
All right, I grew up in Indiana. I can appreciate that.
So there was a little Italian restaurant in a town of about 500 that was about 10 miles away. And my dad would take us there. It was like twice a year. But it was, I mean, we looked forward to it. We'd ask him all the time. Of course, that it was pronounced Italian. I don't know if you knew that.
We all understand.
My granddad used to call it Italian all the time.
Yeah. So, no, and so, honest to God, I didn't go to a Chinese restaurant till I was in college. These are things I didn't see because they just didn't exist. But I was listening to the first part of the show, and I agree with what you said, Jason. I think people are going to be dying to get back into the scene. I know that my favorite brewery here in Eugene, and we are blessed with so much good beer.
Don't even say blessed, Rick. You guys are spoiled.
Yeah, it's beyond blessed.
And I mean in Oregon for sure, but Eugene in particular is Oakshire. And 6 years ago, I started going there almost every Tuesday. There's always an exception because they release a new beer every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. And basically, I started going to say, prove it. You know, no way. Well, 6 years later, they're still releasing a new beer now, sometimes they're small batch, sometimes they're this year's seasonals, and they released them a year ago. And sometimes it's something that they found in a pail underneath a desk down in the basement. But
beer release.
It's not just it's the beer release, Joby, but it's also the experience, and there is a community that has grown around it.
Mm-hmm.
There are those of us who are we're at Oakshire Tuesday nights because we don't believe them after 6 years. And there's little things like that I know you're doing at Barrel House that people key into, and they can't wait to get back to that.
That's good. They're hoping that you guys miss a Tuesday so they cannot release a beer, but you guys are getting them every Tuesday.
We're trying.
Okay. No, I think you guys are right. It's just I think the thought is, as it goes on further, what happens, right, to that feeling. But yeah, no, I agree with you. There's tons of stuff like that where it's you have to be there to experience it and be there for the camaraderie. And it's really not even about, like you said, it's not even about the release. It's like the people that you talk to when you're there and everybody you're talking to. But I'm looking, I have because I'm on my computer, I have Facebook and Instagram open here. One of the other things, Jason, is like you said about cooking, is people are becoming artisanal bakers. There's probably going to be tens of thousands of artisanal bakeries popping up at people's houses. Food.
Pizza, if you've ever had any doubt in your mind or any question, pizza will be the new American food. There's so many restaurants trying to convert themselves to quick takeout pizza because it's simple and you can throw any kind of topping on it. And typically, if you have a good base, if you have good crust, in my opinion, you're going to have good pizza, right? But I've got all kinds of restaurants right now that are starting to shift ingredient platforms. I sell food for a living, and they're definitely starting to shift themselves towards some kind of pizza quick service. It's easy to throw in a box. You're not going to worry about somebody tumbling it or messing up the presentation. It's a great to go kind of food.
My wife and I were heading back to the Midwest for her mother's 85th birthday next month. That's obviously canceled, but in order to prepare, you're going back to see family, right? So we both decided we were going to lose weight, right? So we both cut out carbs. We didn't go on some keto diet, but we decided cutting carbs. Jason, let me tell you, as soon as we cancel that flight, screw that. Give me the pizza, get me the spaghetti. I'm going to make me some big ash, and helping through this. That's your.
I think everything you said is on par.
Jason has up the ante.
I'm sorry, my beer glass was empty, and I don't have any more. Sadly, with some quarantine rules in place, I'm not out gallivanting amongst the breweries, so my beer supply is out unless I want to open a big 750 of aged stout or something, which I don't want to do. So I think it's a good time, which I haven't done because I was reluctant to break the seal. But we've got our Barrel House 101 commemorative single barrel from Jack.
All right.
So I was afraid to crack it. I felt like if I opened the cap, it would devalue the whiskey somehow. But
I think the value is in putting it in your glass.
I'm on board with you. Tonight, it seems like no better night than tonight.
I think the value is you didn't eBay it.
Well, we got to think about resale value too, Rick. And
I think, Rick, I'm with you. I was on the low carb thing for a while, and at our house right now there is bread, there is pizza dough, there is pasta. I don't know. It's there. The memes about what will look like after quarantine, where you can go either way, right? You can come out of this super fit and skinny, or we can all come out of this. One of the things is, Jason, I noticed you've got your hat on also. Curtis looks nicely haircutted, but I am in need of a barber. And I did hear today that there's some rogue barbers they're making house calls.
I'm glad you picked up on that, Joey, because after I showered today, I was like, I'm looking a little scruffy, a little shaggy right now, especially in the back. So thankfully there's no rear cameras on this.
If the superstars are wearing hats, then that's a thing. We have to wear hats.
There may be a point soon where I just say screw it and I pull out the shears and I go real low.
That I have thought about that also. Just
Rick knows what we're talking about.
Just taking it down.
It's all I got.
Well,
yeah,
I did. I ended up getting a haircut just a couple weeks ago. And in fact, I think I got it on Tuesday and our shelter in place was Thursday. So I'm all right, but I'm seeing plenty of people who are in the same boat as you two. And I'm looking forward to doing some sort of Zoom with my stylist and having her talk me through what she does and see, and I'm going to record the whole thing.
Okay, Kurt.
And just
I
to
think,
see.
I don't
just
think
to
that's
see.
going to translate.
No, that sounds disastrous.
No, but I think it's going to be. I think it'll be video gold. So of course I'm up for it that way.
You'll never get back
But I
to
have.
the profile picture that you've got up right
Well,
now.
you know, I'm trying to think. You two may have never known me with a shaved head. Have either of you two seen me with a shaved head?
But I also sported a shaved head for many years that I did myself.
So
Never
if
seen the
it
shape
so
that I saw you with really long hair.
right, so if it goes south, I'll do my best Rick Hot, and then you know, there I am.
Those of us who have never had hair really pissed off when Curtis shaved his head, because he's got a great head of hair, and yeah, come on.
Well, you know,
that's the way life works. That's the way it goes. The people that have hair want to shave it off. The people that don't have hair.
I've outgrown that, but I'm not afraid to do it if say I'm live casting me cutting my own hair just for the shits and giggles of it.
I would watch that. I would tune in for that, just so you know.
So, Joby, when did shifting gears back to some booze?
Yeah.
Is the happy hour show. When did you grace me with this single barrel select? That was last April, right?
Yeah, because we went to Tennessee in November of 2018. I just remember.
So this bottle is almost a year old. I just cracked it. It's got beautiful vanilla and caramel and oaky notes. Rick, what's the oldest bottle of booze you got in your cupboard right now?
His cover's not very far.
See, actually,
Lagavulin, very nice.
I just finished that one off. So right now, I've got a
Glenlivet.
No.
Fiddick.
No. No, it's not one of the two regulars.
What's on your shelf?
It's a 14. It's a 14, and it's beautiful. But it's a Glen fill in the blank 14.
You got a handful of Glens at the restaurant shelf, don't you, Joby?
So the Glen just means a little spring that's near the distillery. So you can have Glen, whatever. You can have a million of them. No, that's good.
Yeah.
It's
the Glen. I think it's pronounced Glengarry.
Glengarry.
But it's Glen. Garioche. Glary. It looks like Glario. But
it's literally the spring of Garioche, or I'm not Scottish, but yeah, I was on a big Scotch. I've shifted to American whiskey the last couple of years. I was a big Scotch guy before. I don't know. I lost my taste for the peaty. I got to get back into the kind of Lagavulin. The one you just showed is nice and smoky and peaty.
Oh my God.
Back in South Dakota days, Curtis and I drank a lot of single malts, and I still try to keep a few around. I'm like you, Joby. For me, I moved to the American whiskeys because, quite honestly, the single malts are getting priced out.
Yeah, they got really expensive. But now some of our American ones have. But Jason, if you guys have never been to Tennessee, Lynchburg, where the distillery is, was a pretty awesome place. It's like population 700 and something people. And it was like going back in time. It was pretty cool. The distillery is nice, and you can't actually drink liquor in the town. You can buy beer from a couple little stores that are there, or have a beer at like a couple of the places that are there. People have to go to another county to get their liquor, so they can't even drink Jack Daniels in the town that Jack Daniels made. It's pretty interesting.
How does that work out with the tasting then? So this is a single barrel select. It's the personal collection, and you enjoyed when you went there. You got to pick out the barrel that you wanted for your restaurant. It's got a cool plaque on the bottle and everything. But when it comes to the master distiller who's tasting for consistency, is it a swish and spit then?
No. So the tasting and the educational part of it is allowed. They've got some exceptions for that.
Gotcha.
And you talk about the master taster, and there were two guys, and I forget their names now. They're actually pretty famous. They've been on the commercials and stuff. They wear overalls. That's their uniform, or that's just their daily outfits. Overalls.
They open their closet door and it's like 20 different styles.
Yeah, they got Monday through Friday.
It's comfy.
Yeah.
They're not the same two guys with the wine coolers from back in the 90s.
No, Bartles and James. No, not
Okay.
Bartles and James. I remember those guys.
That sounds like whiskey Oompa Loompas.
Oh man, the guy who tasted us, he had worked there for, I don't know, like 30 plus years. One of those things where everybody in the town is supposed to work at a distillery at one point or another. And he was one of those guys who started working there and he never left, but he had an incredible palate. He had an insane palate, actually. And he was the taster. So Jack Daniels, the regular, not the single barrel, the regular stuff is supposed to taste the same no matter where you buy it. If you buy it in Japan, if you buy it in Scotland. So these guys taste it and they blend it and they say, okay, put more of this barrel, put more of that barrel. It was really cool to see how they did that. But the single barrel is literally just one barrel and each barrel tastes differently. And so it was cool to taste it with this guy and sit in this room. And it was nice. It was a great experience. And there was that. And then we also did Kentucky, which I also recommend. Some of the distilleries in Kentucky, which is Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. Yep, the bourbons. So that was my first time in that part of the country, and I definitely want to go back. It was really cool.
Is there an age statement on that whiskey?
There's no age statement on the single barrel, but if I remember, I think Jack has to be at least, it's either 4 or 5 years old. I can't remember what it was before they can do it. And it was really interesting to see their charcoal filters. I had always heard of charcoal filter, charcoal mellowing, it says it on the bottle, but literally they run the alcohol through these giant vats of charcoal.
Like briquette kind of things?
Yeah, like almost charcoal briquettes that they do themselves with the trees that are on the distillery grounds. It's pretty cool. I didn't realize how big Jack Daniels was until going there, and it was quite impressive. It's owned by a giant company now, but that's made it even more streamlined and more impressive, actually. So Brown-Forman, which they have now turned, Jason, you mentioned sanitizer, I think it was earlier today. They've turned to making sanitizer now, high-proof alcohol sanitizer.
Well, thinking about the fact that you were able to travel to the distillery, and Rick, we were talking earlier about what the new normal is going to look like, and is the bar and the restaurant going to return in its vibrancy? As I mentioned earlier, Joby, I think and Curtis, I think some people are going to be jonesing to get out. They're going to be so confined after X number of weeks that these types of destinations and these trips are going to be even more valuable and important for people to reset themselves. I've been in my apartment for 6 weeks. I got to get out and do something beyond my borders. So I think, we'll see. Maybe it won't be this calendar year. Maybe it'll be next calendar year after people get some finances back stabilized and things start to really level off. But travel and really exploring your world, I think, will be high on people's list.
Well, I think about I think about the flight vouchers that we all have now for everything that was coming up in the next 4 or 5 weeks, or even in the next 3 months. That all of those trips that were canceled, and now we've got flight vouchers all over the place. And so, when these open up, it's not going to be, oh, I missed whatever the celebration was. It's like, okay, now where can I go off-site and get drunk? Let's go do this. Everyone.
What's on your wish list, Rick? What's on your let's get drunk at this location wish list?
Right. What's on my, oh shit, I have no idea. I think I would like to go back to, I'd like to go back to Denver at some point. I mean, it's not exotic by any means, but to hit Boulder, and then I've been jonesing for Stranahan lately. So we were talking about American whiskeys. Ben, I could go for some Stranahan right now.
Are you going to stay domestic, Rick, or you?
Which, as I recall, you and I went there, and it was right next door to Lucky Dog at the time.
Well, Flying Dog.
Flying Dog, yes.
Yeah.
Right. The owners owned both of them, or it was under the same
Right.
owner, whatever it happened to be. Right.
And Stranahan was in its infancy then.
Yes, it was very young.
It's definitely become popular. All right, so I think that's a good round robin. Rick, where's the first place you would go when this is all over?
You know what? I've been lucky to travel a bunch in the States. The one place that I haven't been that is probably number one on my bucket list is Memphis. I don't really have a Jones for anything to do with the former Confederacy, but there's something about blues and whiskey and sort of the vibe that draws me in.
Very cool.
How about you?
Oh man, I'm gonna defer to Jason first. He looked like he was ready. I gotta think about mine.
That's okay. There's a lot of great places that I think are on my list. If I shake for a moment, I've been always home in Indiana for a wedding. But in terms of bucket list of getting back to, I'm jockeying between Spain, which I went to my senior year of high school, and really love Madrid, and haven't been back since. Would love to check that off. Or Ireland. Like we've had some glimpses of what Ireland is here in California with our heavy rains. Like the foothills have gotten really green for a short little stint, and it reminds me of what Ireland was. And so I definitely have that high on my list.
Hey, come up to Oregon. We got plenty of rain. It's green all the time, and you don't have to drink Guinness every goddamn day.
I don't have to go to Ireland to drink Guinness anymore. I can just travel to the East Coast, and we'll be just fine.
After 2 days of it, you're going to be looking for something different. Sorry.
Yeah, you know what? We went to Portland for right around New Year's time. My girlfriend and I. That was my second time going there. I love it up there. It's when you guys were talking about going out, it reminded me how we literally had no agenda, and one of my favorite things to do is to pop into a bar or even a restaurant bar. It doesn't matter. I have gotten the best advice of where to go next, and then that's continued on through the whole day or the night into these unexpected adventures. And I think that's something that the Zoom thing can't replicate it. Some of my best memories of traveling were like that. Just happened to pop in somewhere and talk to the bartender or another guest. We were in Portland. The one that really sticks out to me is we were at Gigantic Brewing that we found it on accident. We were looking for something else. We stumbled in there and there was only one other guy there and the bartender, and the guy happened to be from Oxnard. Well, we started talking to the bartender and she said, "Oh, you guys are from Ventura. I think this guy is from Oxnard." And then all of us started talking. His girlfriend came, then someone else came, then the owner popped out from the back. We were all drinking, and those things don't happen like they say, like with a salad, right? Good stories don't start with a salad. That's some of my best memories is that kind of stuff. So mine would be, I would like to go back to New Orleans, because I did New Orleans when I was younger and dumber and didn't understand things. And I think I'd like to go back and really kind of explore New Orleans.
I think you touched on the heart of what hospitality really is about, though, and what food and beverages has always brought to the table, no pun intended, is that camaraderie and that balance between, we want you to stay here, but we've got something else really cool that you need to check out. You know, sending someone on their way from your location is a dual-edged sword. You want them to stay to not only continue to experience your great hospitality and vibe, but also to spend money. But yet you know that in your community, there's some other great spots that need that support as well. And like you said, Zoom will never be able to fully replicate that. You know, I had a similar experience when we were in Ireland. It was, not just Ireland, we went to Europe. We bounced around a couple different countries, and everybody always had some kind of direction to go. And one day we went to grab some beer in Belgium. I really had my sights set on getting some West Vleteren.
Oh, yeah.
We drove 45 minutes from in North France to West Vleteren, and I'm like, well, crap, what are we going to do now? We're out in the countryside. So we drove another 45 minutes to Bruges. Well, lo and behold, when I started searching breweries on my list, Straf Hendrik was made in Bruges, and that's my namesake, Hendrik. So like, well, shit, we got to go to that brewery because that's where the beer with my namesake's made. It just happened to be, you know, within a few blocks of where we were standing. So it's always interesting to see the fiber and the network of what food, beverage, and hospitality does for a community.
Right, and I think
for sure.
the whole
Curtis,
I think that that is like the perfect way to end this evening is talking about how we are reaching out through Zoom, via Zoom, to all the people that we know that we're hanging out with, whether it's FaceTime or Google chat rooms or whatever it happens to be. But it's because we need to see people face to face. But there's still nothing that can quite beat that. Even as an old guy with tinnitus who can't stand going into bars because the music's too loud, like I'm still going to go there because I get to hang out with people. And it's not
Wait a minute, you became Pete Townsend?
Right. I know, tinnitus and low grade or low level hearing loss. So if there's any sort of background noise, like everything is done for me. But I can still stand there and smile and nod with the best of them, right? Hey, yeah, right. So anyway, I think that's a great wrap for tonight, for this show. You know, we're still reaching out. We're still finding ways to connect with people. And especially since we can reach out to somebody who is 900 miles from Camarillo, you know, and have a beer and shoot the shit. That's a very good way to spend a Monday evening.
yes.
Thank you for the invitation.
Dude, cheers.
Cheers.
All we see is Curtis's stock.
Right.
Headshot.
You're right. I know it's and it's one of
This faux boy band photo.
it's the new reality when that we have to deal with laggy systems and families who are all sucking the bandwidth at its maximum the whole way through.
I think your little pocket of Camarillo that you're in is all sucking the bandwidth at the same time, man.
I
Curtis
know,
back. All right.
I don't know. I kind of like that pensive look.
that's,
You know?
He's very pensive. All right, well, gentlemen, have a good night. Be safe.
Right.
It's been
Thank you all.
Toby and Curtis.
Good to see you, Rick. Thank you, Joby, Jason. Good to see you all.
Cheers.
Everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good one.